Here we go. 9 o'clock a.m. sharp. Misfortune Showcase.
Fortune favors the bold.
Shoots first and asks questions later. And opens fire on enemies. She just opened fire. When you clash with foes, her bullets hit the blockers and their nexus. After 4 attacks, she levels up. When allies attack, deal 1 to battling enemies in the nexus. Level up when I've seen you attack 4 times.
No regrets, no mercy.
What the hell? Does she have like a ghost form or something? What the hell was that? Now when allies attack, she fires wave after wave.
You got it, Captain.
Jesus, that's a long animation. Honestly, it kind of reminds me of her animation in League, though. Now that I've seen that yesterday from playing League. Your crew can take out anyone.
Captain's here. Keep firing till they're dead on the ground. Right away.
So she gets overwhelmed when she levels.
Fortune smiles.
And then she pings that, and the overwhelm kills. That's interesting. That's interesting. Interesting. Okay. Let's break this down. Let's break this down. They've been doing this thing for some of the videos where they kind of like, you know, they show the effects rather than like the actual words. So let's see it. So she's a 3/3/3. Yeah, we saw this a little bit before. When allies attack, deal 1 to battling enemies in the nexus. So yeah, it's sort of like Anivia a little bit, but she doesn't have to attack for it. It's when allies attack, when you declare an attack. And it's when I've seen you attack 4 times. Okay, so this is it. This is the Quinn synergy. This is the scout deck. If you want to play her for her level up, you want to run her with scouts. That's the deck. It's Quinn, Scouts, and Misfortune. Because the scout will basically allow her to trigger more. And she can just stay on the bench. She can stay fat-kitted while your team is going in and triggering her effect. She can kind of be like a backliner. When I've seen you attack 4 times, so that's the same level up condition as Quinn, except she comes out on 3, which means she's gonna see more attacks. And unlike her, she doesn't have to attack to get value. So she's like a much better Quinn, kind of, in a way. In terms of the level up condition, anyway. A 3/3/3 is pretty solid. And when she levels up, she gets overwhelm and +1/+1 like Draven. And she deals 1 damage 3 times. So she triples her power when she levels up. It looks really strong. I think it's less strong than it looks, but yeah, this is a strong card for sure. This is pretty good. Overall, the idea of dealing combat damage to enemies like during their blocker phase, usually they'll still get like blocks out of them, and if she wants to gain value as a card, you're usually gonna have to forego her body for a bit. You're gonna have to combine her. She's kind of like comboing with one deck, which is like the rally type of stuff. You can run her in other decks. Like I said, she's definitely not as strong as she looks. A lot of you guys are saying she's like the strongest champ in the game. She's pretty good. Don't get me wrong. Like if you play a lot of like cards like Anivia and cards like Tarkaz, a lot of their effects are like good, but not as good as they seem, because usually dealing 1 damage to enemy units that choose to block in most cases won't accomplish very much. It sometimes keeps your units alive a little bit. And to get value out of her, you usually can't attack or block with her. And that's a really big deal, by the way. Deal 1 3 times to battling enemies in the enemy nexus. That's just her skill, I guess. And double up is deal 2 to an enemy unit. If this kills it, deal 4 to the enemy nexus. So it's what's it called in Hearthstone? It's like a double shot, or I forget what this card is called in Hearthstone. The like enemy unit, and then also to the health. This is for 6 mana. Seems a little crazy, honestly. But I mean, I could see it. It's sort of like when you think about it, it's pretty similar to a decimate. It seems so shit. It doesn't seem good, but when you take a decimate and you make it fast speed, usually this condition isn't gonna be like too hard to meet. I don't see it as unplayable, but yeah, this is not a powerful card in general. I will say it has some synergy points and it has some over the top potential. But yeah, I mean it's definitely not as bad as it looks. Like it's actually okay, you know. But yeah, I wouldn't call it generally speaking competitive. I'm not gonna go out of my way to look for a place to run this card in my deck. It can top end aggro decks. It's not bad. Crackshot Corsair. When allies attack, deal 1 to the enemy nexus. Okay, when allies attack, deal 1 to the enemy nexus as a 1/1/1. So it's good with plunder, of course. You have, you know, that kind of like rally synergy, because yeah, if you're running like a rally deck, you can definitely be pinging this a lot. Gangplank synergy, kind of. Usually Gangplank wants to be saving the kegs for things that are a little bit bigger, but yeah, I mean it does have a bit of a synergy point with Gangplank. Crackshot Corsair, this is pretty okay. This is pretty alright. Better Prankster. It could be a bit of a better Prankster. Unfortunately, it's not per ally, guys. It's just per attack. So it's like, Prankster is like when they block all your allies, you're dealing like 5 damage. Whereas this is just every attack you take. It's gonna be hard to get value out of playing this on turn 1. Keeps in the bench too. Yeah, I think it's really, really important to evaluate a card's value based on whether you actually feel comfortable using their body. Because a lot of cards are gaining value out of an effect plus a body. And that's going to be something, usually Battlecry effects, where you get your effect and then you can use the body afterwards. But cards like Crackshot Corsair and Misfortune will look better than they are because you will almost always have to forego her body entirely, right? So like, usually you're not going to be able to take attacks. Maybe you'll have like an aggro deck that clears the board, so that's fine. She's good, don't get me wrong. And Crackshot Corsair is the same way. It's like if you play it on turn 1, you pretty much can't attack or block with it. You could maybe, I think, block into something like Allegiance Saboteur if it's like really valuable. You're not really comfortable using this as a body, and it's a pretty cheap effect that's just going to deal a couple pings. I think you could fit this in as a plunder trigger if you need a plunder trigger. I don't think it's going to be like enough value in general though. Prowling Cutthroat. 1/1/1 Fearsome Elusive. That's very interesting as a card. So I like the design. It's really cool. It's basically designed to be a plunder enabler. This is like a card you play on turn 1 and it will allow you to get in that chip as often as possible. You'll get in this 1 damage as often as possible and just trigger plunders. It's cool. Yeah. No, it's a sick design. It really is. So yeah, you can use this. This is totally fine. The question is, you know, if you're looking for plunder triggers, there's a lot of these cards that are basically all plunder triggers, like Crackshot Corsair, Prowling Cutthroat, then you've got like Warning Shot. There's gonna be probably like 10 different plunder triggers that are all gonna work as options, right? And the question you guys are gonna have to ask is, what's the best plunder trigger for my deck, right? And that's gonna be hard to answer. It's gonna depend on the deck. I think that this card is definitely a consideration, for sure. And obviously, if you buff this, then it can get like sort of funny. It's like when you use standalone on it, it's kind of cute. In reality, the Fearsome isn't going to be valuable enough for you to want to be buffing this and using it as elusive. So yeah, it's just a plundered trigger basically, but it's fine. You can run it in like an aggro deck. It's sort of like a Precious Pet that's getting it in a little more with elusives. But in just an aggro deck where you're looking to get DPS, this is far, far, far worse than Precious Pet. Precious Pet will attack on 1 and 3 and almost always get it in on those 2 turns, whereas Cutthroat would have to then go on to hit 5 and 7 to even match the damage of Precious Pet's almost guarantee. So yeah, it's not a good DPS card. The Siren. This is her ship. Draw a Misfortune. When I'm attacking, all your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. So everyone has a ship. I think someone in chat was saying yesterday Gangplank has a canonical ship that they must have just not revealed yet. It would be weird for him to not have a ship as well. But everyone has like all these new champions that have ships seem to have like the ship that draws it, right? When I'm attacking, all of your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage while the Siren is attacking, and the Siren itself is Scout. So obviously it's like kind of the perfect combo with Misfortune. Kind of the perfect combo. You play it on turn 7, the ships come in late. And yeah, you play it on turn 7, it's got Scout. So then on turn 8, let's say you play Misfortune, let's say you're attacking evens. So you attack with a Siren after dropping Misfortune, and then you're going to be able to, you know, it's got 7 health, so it's got a good free attack. They usually won't be able to kill it if they want to block it. While the Siren is attacking, all your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. So anything they want to block with will take 2 damage off of your unflipped Misfortune. God, if you have a flipped Misfortune, this is really crazy. because everything will deal 6 damage, which is like, that's going to be a hard game state to achieve, I think. But if you have a flipped Misfortune already, and you've got the Siren coming out on 7, that's going to be crazy. But common case scenario, Siren will follow Misfortune on 8. You'll attack in, you know, you'll deal 2 to everything with Siren, and then you'll swing with full, including second Siren, and you'll deal 2 to everything again. That's pretty sweet. It's hard to evaluate exactly how good this is. That's a really tricky one. But it seems like it's definitely something that you want to be playing. Make it rain. Deal 1 damage to 3 random enemies. 3 different random enemies. Okay. So yeah, it's another random effect. I thought it was like, at first I thought it was like Arcane Missiles from Hearthstone. But it's 3 different random enemies, which means on a lot of board states it won't be random at all. Like in anything. So this includes Nexus, right? So if there's 2 or less units, it's basically gonna always hit Nexus plus those units. If there's 3 or more units, then it's gonna hit some randomness. This is obviously another plunder enabler. Good with powder kegs? Yeah, it's good with powder kegs for sure. It's another plunder enabler. Fuck them spiders. It seems like spiders are getting omega shafted. It seems like they're getting really, really, really shafted overall. I think this card looks pretty solid. It looks like you're gonna have great odds at hitting Nexus. If you want to trigger plunder, you're gonna usually be able to control this kind of effect pretty well. Cards like this you want to pair with additional control points. So what that's going to mean is, like, if you combine this card with, say, P and Z, then your P and Z cards like Mystic Shot and stuff will be basically allowing you to control almost entirely your Make It Rain targets, right? So it's good to combine this kind of card with other forms of control just to allow this card to be much, much more controllable. Yeah, it's a little more RNG. It looks like they're adding more RNG with the set. This is the kind of RNG that I think I don't mind. Arcane Missiles is much, much, much more RNG because it can ping the same thing over and over again, which makes it just like huge variance. This is more okay. There's going to be a lot of board states where this is going to be entirely controllable. It's more like the I guess like OG Bomb Lobber, which is like you're incentivized as a player to try to control it as much as possible. But yeah, it's RNG, so a lot of people are just gonna complain about it in general. I think that Runeterra has become, you know, with every non-Hearthstone card game, literally every non-Hearthstone card game basically turns into, for its time, a haven of like people that just don't like randomness whatsoever. So yeah, I expect a lot of people to not like this card. I don't want to make up my mind yet until we actually see these cards in action. But I think it's possible some of them will be pretty slash frustrating or unnecessary. That being said, I don't know. I don't think I have like an immediate concern before actually getting to like play around with them. We'll see. No Bilgewater Allegiance yet. Yeah, I guessed yesterday that the Bilgewater Allegiance might like shuffle a treasure into your deck. I think that would be probably pretty fair. Barrel with Flip MF is 6 damage or 4? It would be 6 damage. Wait. Oh no, sorry, you said barrel. I thought you meant siren. It's a good question. So well, okay, so it's all one skill, right?
Let me crack.
It's not, she doesn't put 3 different things on the stack. It's just one skill that fires 3 times. I suspect it would be 6 with barrel.
Some RNG can be good and,
it would make the most sense.
Necessary.
Right.
Variance is key to all card games.
That's exactly right. RNG just comes down to like finding a balance and making sure it's implemented in healthy, sort of semi-controllable, semi-reactable ways. You want to make sure the RNG that you're implementing in your card game is the healthy kind. It's like RNG is like cholesterol. You know, there's good cholesterol and there's bad cholesterol. It's like it gets a bad rap, and you know, in some cases it very much should. Don't get me wrong. So let's make the most direct comparison possible, and let's compare her to Draven. Okay. Draven is also a 3-mana 3/3. And you might say, well, Draven's a really good card, Swim, as a 3-mana 3/3, and he just has like quick attack, right? And this is like a 3-mana 3/3 that every time you attack with anything, it deals 1 to all these damage, all these things, and then the enemy nexus 2. That's so good. In reality, you have to understand that this card will almost not be able to attack. And the whole point of Draven being a really, really good card is Draven, on the opposite end of the spectrum, can literally always attack. Literally always. Even when your opponent has a 5 health unit, Draven can still almost always attack. That's like the world of difference, right? So like, let's actually compare what's happening here, right? And let's compare the pre-flip, because yeah, Misfortune post-flip is very good as well, and it's going to be more impact than Draven post-flip. But like, so when you look at these cards for what they really are, Draven basically says, I deal 3 damage to either the opponent's Nexus or a chump blocker, usually it's like Nexus. Usually it's literally like 3 damage Nexus tracks, plus you get to draw a potential discard target. Okay. So you look at Misfortune, and you're like, okay, let's compare this to the 3 damage Nexus attacks. Well, she's dealing 1 to the Nexus. She herself, you know, she's probably going to have about the same amount of time blocking as Draven. Draven doesn't really want to block either, so, you know, that's very fair. That's very fair. She's great versus, like, a 3-1. Yeah, somewhat. It turns the 3-1 into basically a chump blocker. But the thing about this card is, like, anything with 1 health will still get value, right? It's like, the 3-1 becomes a chump blocker, so you're playing Misfortune, you're doing rallies and shit. You play Citrus Courier, you do a swing. The 3-1 can still ghost block the 4 damage from Citrus Courier, right? It's like, this card can't really deny units of value. You're usually going to be in a spot on the defender to hit a block on your 2-1 or your 3-1. First of all, 3-1's a very uncommon stat line. But also, your 2-1 or your 3-1 will usually be able to block something that's pretty big that they wouldn't have killed anyway. Like, they still get the block. Right? The block still goes through. They just don't get the damage. Usually, you can choose to block something that's kind of thick, so the damage wasn't going to matter anyway, right? So, like, don't get me wrong. She is a good card, but she looks really, really, really crazy, and it's important to remember, like, when you compare her to Draven, like, think about that comparison. Draven is kind of like 3 Nexus damage every turn, and she's actually very similar, but she never gets, like, they do a similar thing. They ultimately do. Draven kind of, like, makes the opponent lose 3 Nexus damage a turn, and she makes the opponent lose 1 Nexus damage a turn, and sometimes, like, puts unit pressure down. Like, they are actually really similar cards. But it's easy to look at this card as having a bonus on top of Draven, when in reality, it's kind of the same thing. That's important to remember, okay? Draven is really strong, and MF is just strong. I would say, I would guess, if anything, that this card might be a bit weaker than Draven. But Draven's a fucking good card. I fucking love Draven. I've been putting him in everything. I put Draven in Spiders. I put Draven in aggro. I think running aggro with that Draven is a straight up mistake. Period. Like, Draven's nuts. So, I mean, yeah, she's a good card. Don't get me wrong. Like, she's not going to be a weak card, right? So who are the canonical gays in Runeterra? Okay, none of them are confirmed. So they're all just implied. That makes sense. Implications are like, that's sort of how you appeal to both audiences, right? It's like, because if you want them to be gay, then in your head, they're gay. But if that makes you uncomfortable, which, you know, I mean, why would it? It's the year of our Lord 2020. But if, for example, you or anyone else was uncomfortable by that interaction, then in your head, they're straight, right? It's kind of like stepsister porn, which is like, it's the middle ground. Because, you know, you have incest porn, but now everyone is doing stepsister porn. And the reason is because you can imagine it either way. If you want it to be a sister, then it's a sister. And if you want it to not be, then it's not. It's exactly the same principle. And Riot's tapping into that perfectly. Brilliantly. I love it. I love it.